The rusty swing set groaned under the chilly November breeze, and looking back, I should have sensed trouble brewing right then. I was hunched over a stack of essays on a park bench, trusting my wife, Karen, to keep an eye on our kids while I chipped away at work. Then she strolled up with this woman I'd never laid eyes on. "Jake, meet Allison," Karen said, her voice buzzing with that spark she gets when she's hyped about something. "Her son plays with Mia." Allison had a sharp jawline and eyes that sized me up like she was scanning a barcode. "So, you're the big-shot history teacher," she said, offering a neatly manicured hand. "Karen's been singing your praises." I hadn't heard a peep about anyone named Allison. "Good to meet you," I said, gripping her hand. Her shake was strong, almost like she was trying to prove something. "Allison just moved here from Seattle," Karen chimed in. "She's navigating a divorce. Pretty smooth one, though." "Yeah, my ex is even helping me settle in," Allison added, her tone dripping with sarcasm when she said helping, like it was anything but. "We were thinking about a playdate next weekend." The kids hit it off. I glanced over at Timmy pushing Mia on the swing, their giggles slicing through the crisp air. Pure, simple joy, how things ought to be. "Sounds fine," I said, diving back into my papers. That night, as I tucked the kids in, Timmy piped up, "Dad, why was that lady snapping pics of our truck?" "What lady?" I asked. "The one with the pointy chin." He said she had her phone out as we were leaving. Kids catch stuff we grown-ups breeze right past. I figured I'd ask Karen about it, but when I got downstairs, she was already in the shower, humming some tunes I didn't know. "How was the park?" I shouted through the bathroom door. "Awesome," she called back. "Allison's real cool. We might grab coffee this week." The water shut off. "She's got wild stories about her ex. He's a car guy here in town. Name's Vince. Brody, I think." The name didn't ring any bells, but it should have. Later, as I flipped through a book in bed, Karen came out, drying her hair, practically glowing, like she'd been wound up tight for ages and finally let loose. "I'm thinking of inviting Allison and her kids over for dinner Friday," she said. "Sure," I mumbled, eyes on my page. "Whatever you're feeling." If I'd known those words would bite me later, I'd have picked them with more care. Friday rolled in quickly. After work, I swung by the store for stuff to make Karen's killer meatloaf. The cashier, probably some kid I taught years ago, grinned and asked how I was holding up. "Doing all right," I said, and I meant it. At home, Karen was buzzing around the kitchen in her favorite jeans and that green sweater I got her for her birthday. She'd done her hair, even put on some makeup, which felt weird for a low-key dinner with another mom. "They'll be here at 6, she said, stirring the gravy. "Allison's bringing some wine." Right on the dot, the doorbell chimed. Punctual folks always make me edgy, though I can't pin down why. Allison stood on our porch, clutching a bottle of red wine, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my truck's insurance. Behind her were two kids I didn't know, a boy around Timmy's age and a girl a bit younger than Mia. "These kids?" I said, dropping to their level. "I'm Jake." The boy stared at me, all serious. "Mom says you teach school." "Yep." "What's your favorite subject?" "Lunch," he deadpanned. Allison chuckled. "Dylan's not big on books. Takes after his dad." Her voice had a bitter edge when she mentioned the dad. Dinner went fine. The kids scarfed their food and bolted upstairs to play. Allison hogged the conversation, spinning tales about Seattle, her divorce, and the grind of being a single mom in a new place. "It's so nice to meet a family that's got it together," she said, waving her wine glass. "Most folks around here feel so, small town, you know?" Karen nodded like she was all in. "I was just telling Jake how lonely it can get sometimes." That was news to me. Karen never said a word about feeling lonely. While I stacked plates in the dishwasher, I caught snippets of their chat in the living room. "He seems solid," Allison said. "Dependable?" "Yeah," Karen answered. "Maybe too dependable, you know?" I shut off the water, straining to catch more, but they'd switched to talking about some rom-com they wanted to see. When I walked in, Allison was glued to her phone. "Gotta get these gremlins home," she said. "School night. Already?" Karen sounded bummed. "Don't worry, we'll do this again soon," Allison said, rounding up her kids like a pro. At the door, she turned to Karen. "Thanks for a great night. It's awesome to have a real friend here." After they left, I helped Karen clean up. She seems nice, I said, fishing a bit. She is, Karen said, loading wine glasses. She asked me to have coffee tomorrow. You cool watching the kids? No problem, I said. That night, Karen was on her phone more than usual. When I asked who she was texting, she said, just Allison. Her ex is giving her grief. What kind? Keeps popping up out of nowhere, stirring trouble. She set her phone face down on the nightstand. She just needs a friend. I should have pressed harder, noticed how Karen's vibe had shifted since meeting Allison, questioned why a woman with an amicable divorce needed so much support. Instead, I kissed her goodnight and drifted off, figuring my wife of 8 years wouldn't hide anything big from me. Saturday morning, Karen headed out for coffee, wearing perfume I didn't recognize. When I mentioned it, she said she was trying new scents. The bottle on her dresser was new, not something I'd seen before. I'll be back in a couple hours, she said, pecking my cheek. Allison's giving me a tour of town. Have fun, I said, watching her pull out of the driveway in her old Ford. She didn't come back for 4 hours. When I asked about coffee, she said they got caught up chatting. When I asked about the tour, she shrugged and said they just drove around, nothing fancy. When I asked Karen if she'd enjoyed herself, she just nodded and said, yeah, without giving me much to go on. That night, while I was marking papers at the kitchen table, I noticed she was quieter than usual, her eyes flicking to her phone, a little smile curling her lips at texts she didn't mention. You good? I asked. All good, she said, brushing it off. Just worn out, maybe? But she didn't seem worn out. She seemed like she was hiding something. In bed, I listened to her soft breathing, wondering when my wife started feeling like someone I didn't know. Monday morning hit me with a check engine light on my Chevy. Just what we needed, with money already tight from new brakes last month. I can drop you at the school, Karen offered as I glared at the dashboard in our driveway. Thanks, but I gotta get this checked out today, I said. Don't want it turning into a bigger mess. She was packing lunches for the kids, moving with that same distracted vibe I'd been picking up on all weekend. There's a shop on Jefferson Avenue, she said, not looking up from the peanut butter. Brody's Garage. Allison mentioned it. The name clicked. That's her ex's place? Think so, she said, still focused on the sandwiches. She says he's solid at what he does. It felt strange she'd suggest her ex's shop, especially after all she'd said about their rocky split. But maybe that's what amicable looks like these days. Brody's Garage sat in an old service station on the corner of Jefferson and Pine, the kind of spot that had probably been wrenching on cars since the 70s. A faded sign bragged about honest work for honest prices, though the peeling paint and rusty awning hinted those promises had seen better days. The office reeked of gear oil and burnt coffee. Behind the counter was a guy in his 30s, hands stained with grease, standing like he owned the place because he knew he was good. Can I help you? He asked, scrubbing his hands with a grimy shop towel. I'm Jake Thornton, I said. Check engine light popped on this morning. His face twitched, just a hair, when I said my name. Thornton, he repeated. Your wife Karen, right? Yeah. How'd you, small town, he said, flashing a smile that didn't quite hit his eyes. My ex, Allison, mentioned meeting you guys at the park. Said your wife's real friend. This had to be Vince Brody. Up close, he was bigger than I'd pictured, broad shoulders, rough hands, the kind of guy who took up space. Not the vibe I expected from Allison's talk of an easy divorce. Right, I said. They've hit it off, from what I hear. He grabbed a set of keys and stepped around the counter. Let's check out that Chevy. We headed to my truck, and Vince popped the hood like he'd done it 1,000 times, scanning the engine like it was an old friend. When'd you last change the oil? He asked. A couple of months back, I said. He checked the dipstick, wiped it on his towel, and squinted at it. Running a bit rough. Probably needs a diagnostic to pin it down. How long's that take? A few hours. Need a lift somewhere? High school. I teach there. No kidding, he said, slamming the hood. What subject? History. Bet it's nice, those summer breaks, steady hours. There was an edge to his voice, not quite sharp but not warm either. Your wife said she's been hanging with Allison, he said, catching me off guard. They've grabbed coffee a few times, I said. Good for them. Allison doesn't make friends easily. He started filling out a work order, pencil scratching against the paper. Most folks find her a bit much. I thought of Allison's piercing stare, that firm handshake. She seems all right, I said. Oh, she can turn on the charm when it suits her, Vince said, looking up from the form. Just saying, some people get worn out by her after a while. I nodded, taking the work order he handed me. I'll call when it's done. Probably this afternoon. I started to walk off, then turned back. Can I ask something? Go for it. Allison said your divorce was amicable. That's rare. Vince let out a dry laugh. Depends what you call amicable. We're not chucking wrenches at each other anymore, if that's what you mean. But it wasn't a picnic. He studied me, like he was weighing how much to say. I don't know your wife well, but she seems decent. Maybe ask her what Allison's been feeding her about our marriage. What's that mean? Let's just say Allison's got a knack for playing the victim card with a few extra flourishes. Before I could dig deeper, his phone buzzed. Brody's garage, he answered, giving me a quick wave as he headed back inside. I spent the walk to school replaying the conversation, trying to piece together the weird vibes I couldn't quite pin down. One thing was clear, whatever went down between Vince and Allison, it wasn't as smooth as she'd made it sound. At school, I threw myself into teaching, glad for something to keep my mind off it all. My third period was deep in a debate about themes in To Kill a Mockingbird when Principal Carter poked his head in. Jake, got a minute? He asked. Out in the hall, he shut the door behind us. Carter was a wiry guy, always on edge, the type who'd climbed too high on the ladder and was scared of falling. Everything is okay at home, Jake, he said. The question landed like a bucket of ice water. What's that supposed to mean? Saw your wife yesterday at the gas station on Route 12, he said. She was with some guy I didn't know. My throat tightened. Big guy? Looked like a mechanic? Carter hesitated, picking his words. They looked pretty chummy. The bell rang, and kids spilled into the halls, their chatter bouncing off the lockers. Probably nothing, Carter said, backpedaling fast. Just figured you'd want to know. All day, I chewed on that, scrambling for harmless explanations. Maybe Karen's Ford needed a quick fix, and she'd called Allison for help. Maybe Vince offered to check it out. Maybe Carter got it all wrong. But when Vince called later to say my truck was ready, I headed to his shop with a knot in my gut, questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Just a bad sensor, Vince said, tossing me the keys. $40. I paid up but hung around the counter. Can I ask you something else? Sure thing, he said, leaning back. Karen's Ford, has it been in here lately? His face went blank, like he'd flipped a switch. Why? Someone saw her at a gas station with a mechanic yesterday, I said. Just wondering. Vince put his pen down, looking me square in the eye. Jake, I don't poke around in other folks' marriages. But if I were you, I'd start keeping tabs on where your wife says she's going and who she's with. What's that mean? Means small towns talk, he said, glancing around the empty office. Your wife's been here 3 times in the last couple weeks. Not for car trouble. My stomach twisted like I'd been kicked. What? She shows up when Allison drops off the kids, he said. Says she's picking up her friend. But Allison's kids haven't been here in over a month. I stared, trying to wrap my head around it. You're saying, I'm not saying nothing, he cut in. Just maybe ask her about those coffee dates. I drove home, hands clamped on the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Karen's Ford was in the driveway, parked like always. Inside, she was at the kitchen table, helping the kids with homework. She looked up, flashing the same warm smile that hooked me 8 years ago. Truck fixed, she asked. Yeah, $40, I said, hanging my keys by the door. How was your day? Good, she said. Quiet. She turned back to Timmy's spelling sheet. Allison called. We're thinking of taking the kids to the park tomorrow after school. Which one? The one where we met her, she said. Why? Just wondering. But it wasn't just wondering. Pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to look at, connecting dots I'd been dodging for weeks. That night, after the kids were asleep, I tried to bring up what Vince said. But every time I got close to asking straight up, something held me back. Maybe fear. Maybe a stubborn hope I was wrong. Or maybe it was how Karen kept sneaking glances at her phone, smiling at texts she didn't show me. I'm hitting the shower, she said around 10. While the water ran, I eyed her phone on the nightstand, face down as usual. I'd never snooped before, never needed to. But now, I reached for it, then froze. Crossing that line would change everything, whether I found dirt or not. Instead, I climbed into bed, listening to her hum that same unfamiliar song from the shower, the one she'd been humming all week. Thursday morning at the grocery store felt off. Maybe I was paranoid, but the cashier who usually chatted me up barely looked at me. The pharmacist, always good for a quick joke, just nodded and moved on. I was loading bags into my truck when Mrs. Delaney popped up beside me, like she'd materialized out of thin air. "Jake," she said, her voice heavy with that tone old ladies use when they're about to drop a bombshell. Mrs. Delaney lived a few houses down, the kind of neighbor who knew everyone's business because she made it her job too. She brought us pies when the kids were born, cookies every Christmas, but never tracked me down in public like this. "Mrs. Delaney," I said, shutting the tailgate. "How are you holding up?" "Fine, dear," she said, glancing around the parking lot like she was in a spy movie. "Everything is all right at home?" That question again, like a bad song stuck on repeat. "Why?" "I've seen Karen's Ford parked on Maple Avenue a lot lately," she said, eyes sharp behind her glasses. "In front of Brody's place. Usually afternoons, after school." Maple Avenue, where Vince probably lived. A cold weight settled in my gut. "Are you sure it was her car? Blue Ford with that scratch on the rear door, from when she clipped your fence last summer?" "It's hers." "I wouldn't bring it up," she went on, "but I haven't seen Allison's car there when Karen's around. Just seems strange." I thanked her and drove home in a fog, my mind spinning. Karen said she was hanging with Allison, but if Allison wasn't at Vince's when Karen was there. At home, I found Karen folding laundry in our bedroom. She looked up as I walked in, and for a split second, I swear I saw something flash across her face, guilt, maybe, or panic. It vanished so fast I wasn't sure. "Is the store okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, setting the bags down. Ran into Mrs. Delaney. "Oh?" Karen's hands paused on a t-shirt. "She said she's seen your car on Maple Avenue," I said. "Maple Avenue?" She started folding again, slower, more careful. "Not sure I know where that is." The lie slipped out so smooth it stole the air from my lungs. I'd been married to Karen for 8 years, and there she was, lying to my face without a flicker of doubt. "That's where Vince Brody lives," I said, keeping my voice low. "Is it?" she replied, turning to the closet to hang up my work shirts with the same careful focus she'd given the laundry. "Why would I be on Maple Avenue?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." She spun around, her face a picture of innocence. "Mrs. Delaney's getting up there, Jake. Maybe she saw some other blue Ford with a scratch on it. Plenty of those around." Another lie, plain as day. I could see it in the slight twitch of her eyes, hear it in the faint shake in her voice. But she flashed that warm smile I'd fallen for 1,000 times. "Yeah, probably," I said, not knowing what else to say. That afternoon, I ducked out of school early and drove to Maple Avenue. It was a quiet street, old houses with wide lawns and towering oaks. Vince's place was easy to spot, a small gray Craftsman with his work truck in the driveway. Karen's Ford wasn't there, but that didn't mean much. She could have come and gone. I was about to pull away when Vince stepped onto the porch in jeans and a flannel, looking more relaxed than he did at the shop. He spotted my truck, and his face tightened. I rolled down my window. "Afternoon, Mr. Thornton," he said, strolling over. "Something I can do for you?" "Just checking out the area," I said. "Getting a feel for it." "This street's kind of out of the way," he said, calling my bluff. "Look, I need to ask you something, and I need it straight." He glanced back at his house, then leaned against my truck. "Go ahead." "Has my wife been here?" He studied me for a long beat. "What did she tell you?" "I'm asking you." Another pause, then, "Yeah, she's been here." The words hit like a sledgehammer. "How many times?" "Didn't keep a tally." "More than once." "When?" "Afternoons, mostly. Sometimes in the evenings." He stood up straight. "This is weird as hell, man. Were the kids with her?" "Nah, she said they were with a sitter." I shut my eyes, the world spinning. Karen had been lying about everything, the playdates, the coffee runs, the time with Allison. I know what you're thinking, Vince said, but it ain't like that. Then what is it? She comes by to talk about Allison, mostly. Says she's worried about her. I think Allison's been off since the divorce, maybe having some kind of breakdown. He ran a hand through his hair. She's been asking what Allison was like before, if I think she's dangerous, to herself, or maybe even your family. He shifted, uneasy. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but Karen's scared. Says Allison's got this weird fixation on your life, your marriage. That wasn't what I expected. What? The way Allison talks about you, your house, your kids, it's not right. Karen thinks she might be trying to. I don't know, wedge herself in somehow. I stared at him. You buy that? I know my ex, he said, glancing around. She's capable of some wild stuff. He stepped back. Look, talk to Karen. She knows more than I do. Why didn't she tell me she was coming to you? Said she didn't want to stress you out, though you might not believe her. I sat there after he went inside, trying to make sense of it. Part of me could see it, Allison's intense vibe that first night, the way her eyes seemed to catalog our house, our family. But another part wondered if this was some elaborate cover Karen and Vince cooked up to explain her sneaking around. When I got home, Karen was in the kitchen, starting dinner. Her eyes flicked to the microwave clock as I walked in. You're back early, she said. Got my grading done, I said, sitting at the table, watching her move. How was your day? Fine, she said. Quiet. She grabbed stuff from the fridge. Thinking of doing burgers tonight. Sounds good. She moved with that familiar rhythm, grilling patties, slicing tomatoes, toasting buns. I'd seen it 100 times, but now it felt like a show she was putting on. Karen, I said finally. Is there something you need to tell me about Allison? Her hands froze on the cutting board. What do you mean? Just wondering if she's really the friend you think she is. Why would you say that? Just a hunch. I studied her face. Has she ever done anything to make you uneasy? She set the knife down and turned to me. For a second, I thought she'd come clean. Then she smiled. She can be a bit much sometimes, she said. Probably just lonely. Maybe you should keep your distance, I said. Just till you know her better. What, you telling me I can't see my friend? Her voice had a sharp edge I hadn't heard before. Of course not, I said, treading carefully. Just suggesting. Because that sounds pretty controlling, Jake. That word, controlling, hung there like a slammed door, the kind of jab meant to shut you up. I'm not controlling, I said. I'm worried. About what? Me? Us? She stared at me, then turned back to the stove. Nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. My wife was lying about where she'd been, who she'd been with, spinning stories to cover her tracks. The only question was whether she was cheating or caught up in something else entirely. That night, I lay awake, listening to her breathe, trying to figure out which scared me more. Saturday afternoon was cold and dreary, the kind of November day that whispered winter was coming. I was out front, raking leaves, while Karen took the kids to the store. I'd started keeping tabs on Karen's comings and goings, jotting down times and places in a little notebook stashed in my desk. The pattern was ugly. She was only straight with me about half her time. The rest? Either flat-out lies or so fuzzy it was basically the same thing. I was hauling another bag of leaves to the curb when Allison's car pulled onto our street. She parked out front and stepped out alone, no kids in sight. Her stride was sharp, her face all hard edges as she marched up our driveway. She didn't knock, just stood on the porch, waiting for me to come over. Allison, I said, leaning the rake against a tree. Karen's out right now. I know, she said. I'm here to talk to you. Her tone made my gut twist. About what? About what your wife's been doing behind your back. The words slapped me hard. I stepped closer, searching her face. That cold, calculating look I'd noticed before was gone, replaced by something raw, almost furious. I think you've got it wrong, I said. No mistake, she snapped, pulling out her phone and swiping through it. Here's a picture from last Wednesday. That's Karen's Ford in Vince's driveway, 2 in the afternoon. She shoved the phone at me. Clear as day, Karen's blue Ford parked behind Vince's truck. Where were your kids that day? Allison pressed. School, right? And where'd Karen say she was? I racked my brain. Wednesday afternoon, Karen said she was running errands, then grabbing coffee with Allison. She told me she was with you, I said, voice low. I was at work, Allison shot back, her voice slicing through the air. Been at work every Wednesday for the last 2 months. Want to know where she really was? Upstairs in my ex-husband's bedroom. She scrolled through more photos. Here's one from last week. And this one from the week before. Each picture was a gut punch: Karen's car, Vince's house, times I thought she was just living her normal life. Those playdates she mentioned? Allison went on. My kids were never there. Half the time, I didn't even hear about them until after. The front door creaked open. Karen stepped out, her face draining of color when she saw Allie. What's going on? She asked, her voice thin, shaky. Just showing your husband some photos, Allison said, her tone icy. Karen's eyes flicked between us, and I caught the moment she knew the jig was up. Her shoulders slumped, the mask she'd worn for months slipping. Jake, she started, but I raised a hand. Is it true? I asked. She didn't answer right away, just glared at Allison with something close to venom. You followed me, she said. I covered my ass, Allison fired back. Something you should have thought about before you started sleeping with my ex. It's not what you think, Karen said, turning to me. It's complicated. Complicated how? I said. Either you're sleeping with him or you're not. A long silence, then, barely audible, it just happened. The confession hit like a freight train. Even though I'd braced for it, hearing her say it felt like a fist to the chest. Just happened, Allison mocked. Like you tripped and landed in his bed for 3 months straight. You don't get it, Karen said. You don't know what it's been like. What's that mean? I asked. Being married to me? The words poured out of her, like a dam breaking. Being trapped in this house, this town, the same damn routine every day. So you cheat? I said. I needed to feel something again, she said. Allison let out a bitter laugh. And you picked my ex to feel something? The same guy I ditched because he's a selfish, manipulative jerk. Vince isn't like that, Karen said, too quickly. You don't know him. I was married to him for 7 years, Allison said, her voice dripping with scorn. Trust me, I know him. He's playing you, Karen, just like he played me. You're wrong, Karen said. Am I? Has he fed you that line about running off together, starting over somewhere new? Allison's smile was sharp as Karen's face shifted. Yeah, I thought so. Same crap he fed me when things got rough. I stood there, feeling like the world was muffled, their voices distant. My wife was having an affair with a guy I'd looked in the eye, a guy who'd lied to my face. I want you both to leave, I said, my voice quiet but firm. They both turned to me. Who? Karen asked. Both of you, I said. I need to think. Jake, please, Karen said, stepping toward me. I backed up. Take the kids to your mom's for the weekend. We'll sort this out later. Allison was already heading to her car. One last thing, she called back. Ask her about the bracelet. Karen's face went pale. What bracelet? I asked. Nothing, Karen said, too fast. It's nothing. Allison's smile was cold, almost triumphant. That sapphire bracelet you got her for your anniversary? Ask her where it is. She slid into her car and peeled out, leaving Karen and me on the porch in the biting November chill. Where is it? I asked. Karen's eyes welled up. I sold it, she said, voice breaking. Why? Vince needed cash for his shop. Tears streaked her mascara. He said it was just a loan, that he'd get me another one when things turned around. I stared at this woman I thought I knew, now a total stranger. That bracelet cost me $3,000, months of scrimping, picking up extra tutoring gigs, even selling my old fishing gear. I'd given it to her on our 6th anniversary, her smile so bright I thought it was real. Pack your stuff, I said. I want you out tonight. Jake, please, let me explain, no explaining needed. You've been lying for months. Sleeping with another guy. Selling our anniversary gift to bankroll him. I turned toward the door. I'll watch the kids. You pack. Where am I supposed to go? Figure it out. I went inside, shutting the door. Through the window, I saw her sink onto the porch steps, phone in hand. She made a quick call, then sat there, staring at the empty street for 10 minutes. When she came in, she wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm staying at Vince's tonight," she said. Of course she was. "The kids? I'll get them from Mom tomorrow. We need to talk about custody." That word, custody, made it all too real. This wasn't just a rough patch. This was the end. "Get your stuff," I said again. She trudged upstairs. I heard drawers sliding, the closet door thumping shut. 20 minutes later, she came down with a duffel bag in her makeup case. At the door, she paused. "Jake, I know you won't believe me, but I still love you." "Funny way of proving it," I said. She flinched, like I'd swung at her. "I didn't plan this," she said. "But it happened. 4 months. That's not a slip-up, Karen. That's a choice." She opened her mouth, then closed it, turned, and walked to her car. The engine hummed as she drove off, leaving the house too big, too quiet. I spent the evening on the phone, first with my mother-in-law, telling her Karen wouldn't be picking up the kids as planned, then with my folks, giving them a watered-down version of the mess. By midnight, I was drained. I should have been wrecked, but instead, I felt this strange calm, like I'd been bracing for this for months without knowing it. That night, I slept alone in our bed for the first time in 8 years. I thought it'd be rough, but I slept better than I had in weeks. Monday morning, I called in sick to school and drove to see Ellen Harper, a lawyer I knew from district meetings. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, known for handling nasty divorces, including a custody fight for one of my old students. "I need help," I told her assistant. "It's urgent." Ellen saw me within the hour. Her office was all polished oak and legal books, the kind of place that screamed money even if you weren't looking for it. "Jake," she said, waving me to a chair. "What's going on?" I laid it all out, the affair, the lies, the sold bracelet. She scribbled on a legal pad, firing off questions about dates and details. "How long's this been going on?" she asked. She admitted 3 months, but I'm thinking longer. "Any proof beyond Allison's photos?" "Not yet." "We'll need records," she said. "Bank statements, phone logs, anything showing a pattern of lies." She set her pen down. "Do you want to save the marriage?" "No," I said, the answer coming fast, surprising even me. But it was true. Whatever we'd had, Karen torched it. There was no rebuilding. "Then we need to talk about custody," Ellen said. "The court cares about what's best for the kids. An affair doesn't automatically tank her chances, but a pattern of deceit might." "What kind of pattern?" "Using the kids as an excuse to meet her lover, lying about where she was when she was supposed to be with them, financial betrayal." She flipped through her notes. "The bracelet's a big deal. Did she have the right to sell it?" "It was a gift," I said. "Legally hers, I guess. But selling it behind your back to fund her affair? That's a character issue." She leaned forward. "Jake, custody fights get messy quick. Are you ready for that?" I thought of Timmy and Mia, so innocent, stuck in this mess they couldn't understand. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep my kids safe." "Good," she said. "Here's the plan." For the next hour, Ellen mapped out a strategy like we were gearing up for battle. Document everything, every lie, every suspicious move. Collect proof of Karen's deceit. Build a case to show a judge the kids were better off with me. "Don't confront her about anything you find," she warned. "Don't tip her off that you're building a case." The element of surprise would be key if this went to court. I left Ellen's office feeling like I'd stepped over a new line. This wasn't just about ending my marriage anymore, it was about fighting for my kids. That afternoon, while Karen was probably at Vince's, I dug into our financial records with a fine-tooth comb. Bank statements showed a pattern I'd been too trusting to catch, charges at diners I'd never set foot in, gas stations in parts of town Karen had no business being in, and a pawn shop transaction for exactly $2,000, dated the day she sold my anniversary bracelet. The real kicker was her phone records. I'd never bothered with the call and text breakdown before, figuring it was her business. Now, I saw dozens of calls and hundreds of texts to a number I knew was Vince's. They started the day after we met Allison at the park, not 3 months back, like Karen claimed, but 5. What began as a few texts a week had snowballed into near constant contact. I printed it all, tucking the pages into a folder, each one another crack in the foundation of our marriage. Tuesday evening, Karen showed up to grab more of her stuff. Her eyes were red, her face drawn, like she hadn't slept. "How are the kids?" I asked. "Confused," she said. "They keep asking when they can come home." "When can they?" "Maybe this weekend, if that's okay." The stiff politeness between us felt like something out of a bad movie. Just days ago, we were married. Now we were hashing out visitation like strangers. "That's fine," I said. "But we need to talk about what's next." She sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the same spot where we'd shared family dinners a week ago. "I know you want a divorce," she said. "I don't blame you." "It's not about what I want," I said. "It's about what you chose." "I know," she said, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." 4 months. We sat there, the weight of 8 years crushing the air between us. "What now?" she asked. "I've talked to a lawyer," I said. "We'll sort out custody and assets." Her face went white. "Custody? Did you think I'd just let you take the kids?" "I hoped we could figure it out together," she said. "Like you figured out your affair with Vince?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You want to talk fair?" Fair would have been telling me the truth. Fair would have been asking for a divorce before you started sleeping with him. "I didn't plan it, Jake," she said. "It just happened." "No, it didn't. Every lie, every trip to his place, every time you used our kids as an excuse, those were choices." She was crying now, but I felt nothing, no pity, no urge to reach out. The woman across from me had shattered our family, and tears wouldn't glue it back together. "I'll have papers drawn up," I said. "You should get a lawyer." She nodded, silent, and left. I sat in the empty house, picturing what came next, splitting custody, divvying up our stuff, explaining to Timmy and Mia why Mom and Dad weren't together anymore. But first, I had to finish building my case. Ellen warned me this wouldn't be clean. Karen might regret the affair, but she wouldn't hand over the kids without a fight. Neither would I. Friday afternoon was oddly warm, a November day that felt like a last gasp of fall. I'd just gotten home from school when Ellen called. "We've got a problem," she said. "Karen's filed for custody. She's asking for primary physical custody, with you getting limited visitation." The words hit like a brick. "On what grounds?" "She's claiming you're emotionally unstable, potentially dangerous. Says you've been tailing her, harassing her friends, making threats." "That's complete garbage," I said. "I know," Ellen said, her voice tight. "But she's got a lawyer, and they're playing dirty. There's more, she's filed for a restraining order." "A restraining order?" "Temporary. Claims you've been stalking her, and she's scared for her safety." I dropped into a kitchen chair, the room spinning. "This is nuts." "It gets worse," she said. "The restraining order means you can't contact her directly, and it could tank your custody case. A judge might see it as proof you're unfit." "So what do we do?" "We fight," she said. "But we need to be smart. Listen carefully, Jake, don't contact Karen. Don't go near Vince's place. Don't even drive down his street. One slip, even a small one, could ruin your case." I hung up, sitting in the kitchen, trying to wrap my head around it. In a week, I'd gone from a betrayed husband to being branded a dangerous stalker. Karen and her lawyer were rewriting the story, painting her as the victim instead of the cheater. The restraining order wasn't about safety, it was a power move. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. It was Principal Carter. "Jake, I need you in my office first thing Monday." "What's this about?" "Got a call from a lawyer today," he said, his tone flat. "Something about a domestic issue. Can't talk about it over the phone." I spent the weekend in a haze of rage and disbelief. Karen hadn't just broken our marriage, she was gunning for my career and my kids. Monday morning, I sat in Principal Carter's cramped office as he read from a letter Karen's lawyer had sent. "It claims you've been stalking her," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Says you're emotionally unstable, maybe even dangerous." "That's all lies," I said, my voice tight. "I hope so," Carter said, setting the letter down. "Jake, you've been a solid teacher here for 6 years. If this is nonsense, we've got your back." But if there's any truth to it, or if you get arrested, violate that restraining order, or do anything that makes the school look bad, I'll have to act. The warning was clear: keep quiet or risk my job. That afternoon, while grading essays, I glanced out my classroom window and felt my blood run cold. Karen's Ford was in the school parking lot, and there she was, talking to someone I couldn't quite make out. The restraining order went both ways. She wasn't supposed to be within 500 feet of me either. I watched for 10 minutes, trying to figure out her game. Then I saw who she was with: Rachel Coleman, another history teacher, someone I'd called a friend. Karen handed Rachel an envelope, they shook hands, and Rachel nodded, all business, before heading back toward the building. 20 minutes later, Rachel knocked on my door. "Jake, can we talk?" We stepped into the hall, and she handed me the envelope. "Karen asked me to give you this. Said it's important." Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note: "Jake, I know you're furious, and you've got every right to be. But please don't make this harder than it needs to be. The kids need us both. We can work out custody fairly, but only if you stop digging and agree to mediation instead of a fight. Think about what's best for Timmy and Mia. Karen." I read it twice, then crumpled it. "What did she tell you?" I asked Rachel. "She said you're having marital issues, and she's trying to sort it out," Rachel said, shifting uncomfortably. "Jake, you okay? You seemed off lately." "I'm fine," I lied. But nothing was fine. Karen was spinning a story, painting herself as the reasonable one trying to protect the kids while I was the irrational hothead. That evening, I called Ellen and read her the note. "It's a negotiation tactic," she said. "But it's also manipulation. She's trying to guilt you into backing off your rights." Should I reply? "No way," Ellen said. "Any contact breaks the restraining order." She paused. "Jake, are you sure you want to keep fighting? Custody battles are long, expensive, and brutal. No guarantee we'll win." "I'm sure," I said. "Then we keep going," she said. "But we need more evidence." Tuesday morning, as I headed to school, I spotted Vince's truck at the end of my street. He was behind the wheel, just sitting there. When he saw me, he climbed out and walked over. The restraining order didn't cover him, but I still felt uneasy. "We need to talk," he said. "Not a good idea," I said. "Just hear me out," he pressed. Against my better judgment, I nodded. We walked to the corner, away from prying eyes. "I know what you think of me," Vince said, running a hand through his hair. "And you're probably right. But Karen came after me." I tried to keep my distance at first. "At first?" I said, skeptical. "Yeah," he said, looking uneasy. "She kept showing up, saying she was miserable, that you didn't get her. I've been through this with other married women. Usually, I'm smart enough to walk away. Not this time." "Not this time?" I said. "She's different," he said, meeting my eyes. "More relentless. She's not gonna let go of me, or what she wants from the divorce, easy." "What's she want?" "Everything," he said, his smile bitter. "House, kids, alimony. Thinks she deserves it because you weren't meeting her emotional needs." "She said that?" "She says a lot," he said. "Most of it's nonsense, if I'm honest." "Then why were you with her?" He shrugged. "I'm a dumbass. And, well, she's good in bed." The bluntness of it knocked the wind out of me. This guy had wrecked my marriage for nothing. "What's the point of this?" I asked. His face turned serious. "There's a point," he said. "She's scheming something," Vince said. "I don't know what, but she's been making calls, meeting folks, building some kind of case against you." "What kind of case?" I asked, my stomach nodding. "She keeps saying she needs to protect the kids from you." "Protect them from what?" "That's what I can't pin down," he said, shrugging. "You seem like a stand-up guy." He paused, looking uneasy. "I'm telling you this because I don't like being played, and I think she's playing us both." With that, he walked back to his truck and drove off, leaving me on the corner, my head spinning, wondering how my life had turned into this mess. That afternoon, I drove to Maple Avenue, not to Vince's house, but to the end of the block, where I could see his driveway without breaking the restraining order. Karen's Ford was there, as I figured it would be. But so was another car, a black sedan with government plates. I parked behind some cars and waited an hour until Vince's door opened. Karen stepped out with a guy in a suit, Vince trailing behind. They talked on the porch for a few minutes, then the suit handed Karen a business card and left. Whatever was going on, it wasn't just about custody anymore. I was fighting for my kids, and maybe my freedom. The courthouse smelled like polish and panic. I sat beside Ellen at the plaintiff's table, watching Karen and her lawyer shuffle papers 20 feet away. She hadn't glanced at me once since we walked in. Judge Margaret Coleman, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes, had a reputation for slicing through lies. "This is an emergency custody hearing," she said, her voice firm. "I've reviewed both parties' filings. Ms. Harper, present your client's case." Ellen stood, smoothing her blazer. "Your Honor, this case boils down to one question: which parent puts the children first? And who has put their own desires ahead of their kids?" For the next hour, she laid out Karen's web of lies, the fake playdates, the secret meetups with Vince, the betrayal of selling the anniversary bracelet. "Mrs. Thornton used her children as a cover for an affair," Ellen said. "She claimed she was taking Timmy and Mia to playdates while meeting her lover, leaving them with sitters and lying about her whereabouts. This isn't just infidelity, it's neglect." She presented the bank statements, phone logs, and Allison's photos, each piece hammering another nail into Karen's case. When Karen's lawyer stood, he spun a different story. "Your Honor, my client made a mistake. She had an affair and regrets it deeply. But that doesn't make her an unfit mother." He claimed Karen was driven to it by my emotional neglect, that she'd been lonely and depressed, making bad calls but never endangering the kids. "Mr. Thornton has stalked my client," he said, harassing her friends and creating a climate of fear. It was all lies, delivered with a straight face. Then Karen took the stand, dressed in a plain gray suit that made her look fragile. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "I know I messed up," she said. "I hurt my husband, and I'll carry that guilt forever. But I never hurt my kids." Her lawyer prompted, "Mrs. Thornton, tell the court about your husband's behavior after he learned of the affair." "He got obsessive," she said. "Following me, checking on me all the time. I was scared of what he might do." "Scared for your safety?" "Yes. He's got a temper." She let the words hang, heavy with implication. I wanted to shout that it was all bull, but Ellen had drilled into me to stay cool and let her handle it. "Mrs. Thornton," her lawyer continued, "do you believe it's in the children's best interest to live primarily with their father?" "No," she said, tears brimming. "They need stability, and Jake's too angry right now to give them that." When Ellen cross-examined, she didn't pull punches. "Mrs. Thornton, you said you never put your children at risk. Correct?" "Yes," Karen said. "But you left them with sitters while you met Mr. Brody for intimate encounters, didn't you?" Karen's poise wavered. "Yes, but they were safe." "Safe with people you paid to watch them while you committed adultery?" "Objection," her lawyer snapped. "Inflammatory." "Sustained," the judge said. "Rephrase." Ellen didn't blink. "Mrs. Thornton, didn't you repeatedly lie to your husband about your whereabouts?" "I didn't want to hurt him." "So you deceived him instead?" Karen didn't answer. "You said your husband has a temper. Can you give a specific example of him losing it with you or the children?" A long pause. "He gets quiet when he's mad. It's intimidating." "So his bad behavior is silence?" "It's more than that. It's how he looks at me. How he looks at you." Ellen pressed. "Yes. Mrs. Thornton, isn't it true you've never seen your husband raise his voice to you or the kids?" "Well, no." "Isn't it true he's never physically threatened you?" "Not exactly." "And isn't it true you filed for a restraining order to gain an edge in this custody case?" "Objection," her lawyer said. Sustained, the judge ruled, but the point landed hard. Karen's credibility was shredded, and the courtroom could feel it. When I took the stand, I kept it tight and honest. Yes, I wanted custody of my kids. No, I'd never threatened my wife. Yes, I could give them a stable home. "Mr. Thornton," Karen's lawyer said during cross-examination, "you've admitted to investigating your wife's activities. Isn't that stalking?" "I documented her lies to protect my kids," I said. "That's not stalking, it's being a dad." "You followed her to her friend's house." "I drove down a public street once after a neighbor said her car was there a lot." "You questioned her friend's ex-husband about her." I took my truck to his shop for a fix. He volunteered info about my wife, and I listened. It went on like that for 20 minutes, her lawyer trying to twist my actions into something dark. But Ellen had prepped me well, and I didn't bite. The last witness was Allison. I hadn't seen her since that porch showdown, and she looked different, calmer, less raw. She wore a plain navy dress, no makeup, radiating quiet strength. "Ms. Brody," Ellen said, "why did you tell Mr. Thornton about his wife's affair?" "I found out Karen was using playdates with my kids as a cover to meet my ex-husband," Allison said. "When I realized she was using her children as props to hide her affair, I had to speak up." "Did you and Mrs. Thornton actually arrange these playdates?" "No. She said she was with me and my kids when she was really with Vince. I didn't even know about most of these playdates until after they supposedly happened." "In your view, was Mrs. Thornton putting her children at risk?" "She was teaching them it's okay to lie, to use people. That's not the kind of influence I want near my own kids." Karen's lawyer tried to paint Allison as a bitter ex, but she stayed steady, sticking to facts. When he asked why she'd taken photos of Karen's car, she said, "I needed proof. I knew no one would believe me without it." After testimony wrapped, Judge Coleman called a 30-minute recess to review everything. Ellen and I sat in the hallway, silent, lost in our heads. When court resumed, the judge's face gave nothing away. "I've reviewed all evidence and testimony," she said. "This case involves serious allegations on both sides." She paused, eyeing both tables. "The court finds that Mrs. Thornton engaged in a months-long pattern of deception. She lied to her husband about her whereabouts, used her children as cover for an affair, and sold marital property without his knowledge to fund that affair." Karen's face was pale, her hands gripping the table. "However," the judge went on, "there's no evidence Mrs. Thornton physically endangered the children or that Mr. Thornton poses any threat to his family." My pulse pounded. That said, the court is troubled by Mrs. Thornton's willingness to use her children as tools in her deception, showing a clear lack of judgment regarding their emotional well-being. She looked straight at Karen. "Therefore, primary physical custody is awarded to Mr. Thornton. Mrs. Thornton will have supervised visitation every other weekend until she can demonstrate she's addressed these issues." I could barely breathe. I'd won. Further, the judge said, the restraining order is dismissed as baseless. Karen was crying quietly, her lawyer whispering something as he patted her shoulder. After the judge left, Ellen shook my hand. "Congrats, Jake. You got what you fought for." I glanced at Karen, still crying across the courtroom. No victory rush, just an empty ache for something shattered beyond repair. Outside, I saw Allison on a bench, smoking a cigarette. She looked up as I approached. "Congrats," she said, exhaling slowly. "Thanks for testifying." She crushed the cigarette under her shoe. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't done." "What do you mean?" "Karen won't let this go. She'll appeal or find another way to claw back the kids." Her smile was grim. "People like her don't lose gracefully." "What about Vince?" "Him?" She snorted. "He got his fun, no strings. He'll move on to the next lonely housewife." She stood. "We're not buddies, you and me. We just ended up on the same side this time." She walked off, leaving me alone in front of the courthouse. That evening, I picked up Timmy and Mia from my mother-in-law's. They were quiet in the car, sensing the shift, even if they couldn't name it. "Is Mommy coming home?" Mia asked as I tucked her in. "Not tonight, kiddo," I said. "But you'll see her soon." "Are you and Mommy getting divorced, like Billy's parents?" Her 4-year-old eyes were so earnest it hurt. "Yeah," I said, throat tight. "But we both love you, always." She nodded, like she'd known it was coming. Later, with the kids asleep, I sat in the living room, trying to process it all. I'd won custody, but I'd lost my wife, my marriage, my trust in the person I thought I knew best. The house felt different, not empty, but open, like anything could happen next. Outside, I saw Mrs. Delaney watering her flowers in the dusk. She caught my eye and gave a small wave. Some things stayed steady. Tomorrow, I'd have to explain to Timmy and Mia why their world had changed. I'd have to learn how to be a single dad, rebuild from the ground up. But tonight, I was just a guy in his house, listening to his kids breathe upstairs, knowing I'd fought for what mattered and won.